Welcome to episode 130 of Educate and Rejuvenate, the podcast, How to Have Your Best Summer Yet, Part 1. Do you ever feel like you have these grand intentions to rest and get a lot of things done over the summer, but then you blink and it's gone and you feel like, why didn't I get rested? Why didn't I get all the things done? And you feel some regret, like I wasted my summer. Anybody relate to this? I hear you. But it doesn't have to happen this way again. That's what today is for. Let's make this your best summer yet. Welcome to Educate and Rejuvenate, the podcast to help you revitalize your teaching, renew your spirit, and reignite your passion for life. I'm your host, Kelsey Sorensen, a former teacher, current homeschool mom, published author, and certified life coach. Whether you are a teacher in a traditional classroom, homeschool from your kitchen table, or anywhere in between, I am on a mission to help you not only survive as an educator, but thrive. Get ready to uplevel your skills with incredible insights from guest experts and discover the missing piece, rejuvenating yourself. Are you ready to both educate and rejuvenate? Let's go. Okay, I am back recording this episode for the second time. The first time it didn't save for some reason, but you know what? Everything happens for a reason, right? And I think it's going to be even better this second time around. But I will just tell you, I am coming here humbly to you, sharing information from my heart, while I'm also a little bit of a hot mess myself. Like today, I'm like, I need to record all these episodes. Somehow this one didn't get recorded. I've got a vendor booth the next 3 days, and then we're headed down to another one down in Arizona. So I planned that one for my family to leave the day after. And now I'm getting to this week and I'm like, why didn't I plan that better? So honestly, I'm kind of sharing information that I'm like, oh yeah, when I follow this, it goes a lot better. And then sometimes I'm human and I realize I kind of schedule things close together, but you know what? I still use these strategies and I show up in the best way I can. Like I feel like today I've had a lot. And then again, this episode didn't save, but I was able to handle it a lot more gracefully than I would have a few years ago. So very happy about that. Also, what I planned to and did the first time I record this episode is share that I'm just so excited it's summer. I hope you are too. And I'm really excited about the vendor boost. Like I just mentioned, I get to meet with people from our community or new members who then join our community in person. And it is just so much fun. The past 2 years, we've just done one vendor booth. We've done Show Up for Teachers in the Salt Lake, but this year we have 5. So I'm about to do a homeschool conference here in Salt Lake, going down to Arizona for another one in Tampa for Teach Your Heart Out, and then Show Up for Teachers again, and then another one in Utah called Be Kind to Your Mind. So if you live in any of those areas, please come say hi to me at some point. I would love to see you. Okay, but also if you won't be, we do have our Educate and Rejuvenate virtual event, July 16th and 17th, where we will all be able to connect together virtually, have so much fun. So I hope to see you there, if nothing else. And again, next summer, we'll see how this summer goes. I think it might be fun next summer, maybe for my family to do a road trip during the summer and hit some more locations so I can meet more of you. But for now, going from 1 to 5 is a big enough jump for me. So that's what we're doing right now. Okay, so this is part 1 of a 2-part series. I decided to divide this episode into 2 parts. So you have kind of time to think about this first part. And then the second part is when we're going to take what we learn about ourselves from this first part and make an action plan. So the whole goal of this series is to help you get really clear on what you want this summer so you can basically make it happen. And we want to start by observing ourselves and seeing where you want to go with it. And that means that today, this episode is full of a lot of questions. As a life coach, I've learned that questions are some of the best tools to help you learn more about yourself. It's really what I use, what therapists use when I go see my therapist and my life coaches. Questions are basically just magic. It's you ask you get asked a question, you let your mind focus on that question and find the answer. And especially if you allow yourself time to really just think and ponder on these questions, it can really unearth some gold that's inside of you that you didn't know was there. So a lot of questions today. And the reason for this is last summer. So last summer, our Educate and Rejuvenate event was in June, and we wanted something in July too. I wasn't doing all the events we're doing this summer. Last summer, in July, we decided to do a 3-day teacher transformation is what we called it. It was like a 3-day, anybody could come. It was like 3 days of coaching. It was so much fun. But I kind of saw a pattern in what we were coaching people on. And it was in the month of July. It was like the 20s, like July 25th, 26th, 27th, if I remember right, or somewhere around there. And by that time, a lot of teachers were feeling like their summer was starting to wind down. And, a lot of teachers might even go back like beginning of August, starting to get ready for their classroom and everything. And what I noticed was a lot of teachers feeling regret at this point. They felt like their summer wasn't what they wanted. They felt like they either didn't get enough things done that were on their to-do list. They feel like they didn't rest enough. They were just going, and they never found that time to rest. And now it's time to get back into the school year. They felt like they were just filling all that time with like home projects or with other things they were doing, and they didn't actually find that time to rest. Or some just, they're like, I don't even know. I just know this isn't it. I just know that something wasn't quite right. And as we know, summer just flies by for us now that we're grown up. So it's not like when we're children, and summer just feels like a lifetime. It goes by so fast. We want to be really intentional about our summer, because otherwise, and then there's nothing wrong with it. Like I said, so many teachers were relating with each other about this summer wasn't going exactly where we wanted. And we can do plenty of mindset coaching then in July, if you're still feeling like that, right? Because nothing's ever going to go perfectly like we want. Even if you follow all the steps in what I'm sharing with you today, like you're not going to have a quote perfect summer. That's why I didn't title this how to have the perfect summer. I titled it how to have your best summer yet. So this summer can be your best summer yet. And then next summer, you can take what you learned from this summer and create your next best summer yet. And every summer can be the best summer yet, right? So we're just like getting a little bit better and better and better each time. So actually there was a coaching clip that I got permission to share. I've shared it in some webinars, but I don't think I've shared it yet on the podcast. I'll have to double check. But if I haven't, I actually plan to share it again around that time when some of you might be feeling that way. So you can get that validation, but also see how I coach that person on it. I got permission to share it, like I said. But today, what I'm hoping to do is help prevent you from feeling as much that way by the time we get to that point. So in this podcast series, I want to help you strike the right balance between rejuvenating yourself and educating yourself. It's kind of the backwards of educate and rejuvenate. Because with summer, like during the school year, it's like we're educating and then we want to rejuvenate ourselves. Like we're spending a lot of our time teaching, right? During the summer, I want us to really focus on that rejuvenation piece, but also make sure we don't completely forget about the education piece. Okay, so that's really what we're going to be talking about a lot today. I think it's important to have a balance of both and make sure that it's not just like, oh, I'm going to do some rejuvenating, I'm going to do some learning, but it's actually really what you want, really what's going to light you up, really what's going to fill your cup. So with that, that's why I'm doing all the questions to help you ponder on all of that. So with those questions, like I mentioned before, like I really just feel like questions are so magical. So if you're not driving or otherwise multitasking, you might want to get out your phone and have your notes app ready, or even get a notebook and a pencil to be ready to write down your answers. But if not, if you are doing something else, I know that's often the case when you're listening to or watching a podcast, we will have all of these listed in the show notes. So you will be able to refer back and find the questions that kind of resonated with you the most. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions because I feel like some are like me rephrasing things or explaining the questions, giving some context, and then just more questions. Because the reason for that being, some are really going to stick out to you. Like some of it, okay, this was the question for me. And another question that maybe wasn't the one for you was the one for someone else. Because there are certain ones that just hit you at different times that you need. I'm asking different questions. Some of them might hit you more than others. Focus on the questions where you're like, oh yeah, that one was for me. She's reading my mind. So pick your favorites and ideally journal about them if you can. You'll get so much more out of them that way. Writing down the answers is so powerful. Like I mean, I will tell you, I so much have been like, oh, I can just have a podcast on while I'm doing things and listen to it. And still, I don't take notes or journal on every podcast or every training I listen to. That wouldn't be possible. But on certain ones, when I do, and I take those notes, it really just makes the work that much more powerful, because there are things that come when you put pen to paper that wouldn't come if you're just thinking about it in your mind. So it really can just be such a magical process. I really recommend it. Those who did the self-love challenge back in February and did the journal prompts with it saw so much progress. Like they said, wow, these journal prompts were just really powerful. So I highly recommend journaling about this too. And then also, if you want to do that self-love challenge after, is evergreen. You can go back to the lessons that on this podcast feed that say self-love challenge. Go back and listen to it if you need to cultivate more self-love this summer. This might fall into your summer plan that we're going to talk about. Either way though, even if you do just listen, like again, you're going to get a lot out of just listening too, so don't feel bad if you don't get around to it. I'm just sharing an opportunity with you to journal about it. Would highly recommend it. First, we're going to talk about our general observations of ourselves in the school year versus the summer and last summer and how we're feeling about this summer, all of that. We're going to just kind of think about that. So let's think about last summer. How do you feel when you think about last summer? What went well for you last summer? What are you like, oh yeah, I did this. I definitely want to do that again. Do you feel like you got enough rejuvenation? Do you feel like you got enough like up-leveling yourself and educating and learning things you wanted to learn, whether it has to do with teaching or not? Do you feel like you got enough of both sides of that last summer? Think about it. Do you feel like you had that right balance between the two, or do you feel like you were a little off on one? Do you feel like you did a lot to prepare for the school year and then you didn't feel rejuvenated? Or do you feel like you were like, oh yeah, I really rested, but then by the time the school year started, I was like, oh man, I'm so unprepared. Just kind of think back to that time. Think back and be like, what is it that went well and what is it I definitely want to change this summer? And then also just notice, how do you feel when you think about it? Do you feel like relaxed? Do you feel a little bit of regret come up? Do you feel a little bit of dread about, is it going to repeat itself this year? Do you feel indifferent? How do you feel when you think about last summer? And then the transition from last summer into the school year. Now let's talk about that transition into the school year. So we have like our summer, and then as we got into the school year, how do you feel like that transition went? Do you feel like it was smooth? And again, as smooth as it could be, right? Do you feel like you were prepared, or do you feel like there's more you want to do? And then what was your most common feeling during the school year? If you were to name one feeling, one that comes up a lot in my coaching with educators in the Educate and Rejuvenate Club is overwhelm. That one comes up a lot. So think about, how much overwhelmed did you feel last school year? And then compare, how much overwhelmed did you feel last school year compared to how much overwhelm you felt during the summer? And just kind of think about that. And then think about, how do you want to feel this summer? And then going into next school year, what do you want to cultivate this summer that you can then bring with you into the next school year? Is it a feeling of peace? Is it a feeling of excitement? Is it a feeling of contentment, happiness? What is it that you want to feel and bring it with you? And of course, we're human and we're not going to feel one feeling all the time. But if you were to just come up with like, what is the ideal, just like feeling, the emotion that you want to feel, that you want to cultivate this summer, and learn how to not just have it in the summer, but to be able to bring it with you into next school year. And that's going to bring us into that rejuvenation piece. Like, how are we going to make that happen? So now we're going to talk about the rejuvenation we want to have over the summer. What does rejuvenation look like for you this summer? I want you to think about that, because it's going to be different for everybody. Rejuvenation for me, what I need to rejuvenate myself, is going to be different than what you need and what the next listener needs to rejuvenate themselves. It's really personal. What is it you need? Some might be like, oh, I need to lay out by the pool and that is going to rejuvenate me. But for other people, that might like be like, oh, that's nice, but that's not what actually fills me up. What is it that fills you up? Now, I want to read the actual dictionary definition of rejuvenate to you. So there were two ones that I pulled that I felt were applicable. So the first was to make young again, restore to youthful vigor, appearance, etc. What I love about that is thinking about to make ourselves young again. Now picture our summers now compared to, like I mentioned, when summer felt like a lifetime in our childhood, when it was like, wow, a whole summer vacation to do whatever I want. Now it might not be do whatever we want now, especially if we have our own children too, or if you're teaching summer school or anything else. But what is it that we can do to bring some more of our youth in, to have more fun with whatever we're doing this summer? Think about tapping into some of that energy of when you were a kid. How can you tap into that now? What is it like to restore to a youthful vigor? So when you think about like, oh, if you've been teaching like say 15 years and you're just, oh, I'm not looking forward to going into the next school year. But think about when you were just about to start going in, teaching your first year, you probably had a lot of ideas, that spark of like, oh, I can't wait to try this. I can't wait to try that. So what can you do this summer to help like reignite that spark and be like, oh, I can't wait to teach this. And whether it's, you know, in a traditional classroom with your own kids, like, what is it you can do to reignite that spark so you can be like, I am so excited to get back to teaching in the school year. Like, So excited. What would that be? What could be something new to like reinvent the wheel with your teaching? Again, and that can be part of the rejuvenation, but a lot of that falls under the education piece too, but I just kind of went off on that one. But the second definition I pulled was to restore to a former state, to make fresh or new again. And what I loved about this, I feel like that's kind of two pieces. So to restore to a former state would be like, what former state are you wanting to get back to? Are you wanting to get back to some of that energy like when summer was just like this golden opportunity? Are you wanting to tap into that? Are you wanting to tap into, again, like when you were first decided you wanted to teach in whatever capacity you teach? Are you wanting to tap back into when you felt more alive, whenever that was in your life? Like, what former state are you wanting to get back to? And how can this summer be the time that you can do that? That you can restore yourself back to a former state where you felt more alive, more happiness, more peace, more free, whatever that is for you. And then the second piece is to make fresh or new again. So maybe I can't even think of a time where I want to get back to. I want to move forward. I want to create something completely new and become just fresh, like even get more in tune with the true version of me, which is what we've talked a lot about on the podcast too. So what does it mean for you to become fresh and new again? And I just love this question. Again, any of these questions that I'm mentioning, you can swipe that question, be like, that one's mine. I'm going to journal on that one. So what would it mean for you to become fresh and new again? And again, it's going to be different for each of us. And that's just what I love. Like everybody would come up with a different answer to each of these questions. Now, another thing I think is so important just to think of when we think of restoring ourselves to a state or even to become fresh and new again, tapping into that youthfulness. If we've been feeling a lot of overwhelm this summer or this school year that like been seeing a lot of in my coaching in the club, like your body might even need to be restored to like its state or to become fresh or new again, because our body keeps the score. I mean, that's actually a really amazing book. But like when we're chronically stressed, our body actually reacts to it. And so we might actually need some healing, like quite literally in our body. Like if we get stuck in a stress response. In my book, when I was researching for it, and I share this in chapter 5, that's all about the nervous system piece. And if we get into a freeze or a fawn stress response, our body actually slows down on, quote, not essential functions. They are very essential, but not for like if you're in a moment where a bear is chasing after you or whatever, but like things like our immune system, like less essential, like in that moment where the bear is attacking you, right? But if you're chronically in that and you're getting more sick, that could be why. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, but I mean, WebMD and all the research I've done has like verified that that is true. And it also shuts down things such as our digestive system. So even if you just have some tummy issues when you're stressed, like there's a reason for that. So as you de-stress, you'll rejuvenate your physical body as well as your mental state, your emotional state, all of that. So that's why this rejuvenation piece is honestly so important. Now, another part I want to talk about is our thoughts, the thoughts that you've been thinking. So what thoughts were on repeat for you this school year that might not have been helpful for you? Like maybe, and I actually talk about this in an upcoming interview with Katie from the Joy at Home podcast. The one that comes up a lot is I am busy, or I'm so stressed, or I have I have so much to do. When we repeat that constantly all the time, even if like you could try to objectively argue that it's true, but even if it were, quote, true, is it helpful to keep ruminating on that? Because then you're just causing more and more stress and overwhelm. Because when you think that, how does that make you feel? It makes you feel overwhelmed. And then what do you do when you're overwhelmed? You don't do as good of a job at getting all that stuff done. Now, do you? You don't, because none of us do. We're human. So again, what thoughts kept coming up? Or was it something like imposter syndrome? Like you felt like you weren't good enough, or that you felt like other people at your school didn't like you, or other people in your community, your homeschool co-op, whatever, didn't like you. There's a lot of wanting to fit in and things that go on. What are just some common thoughts, like patterns that you've noticed? It could not be anything that I mentioned. It's, personal to you, but what are some consistent thoughts that have come up on repeat that you can use this summer to rewire using like a bridge thought or a ladder thought, which, for example, like if we are using I am busy, you would, ideally be like, I have just enough time to get the things done I need. That might be the ideal thought. You might need a thought in between being like, I am learning that everything gets done at its own time or something. You can just remind yourself of that. and work on rewiring your thoughts over these next few months so that by the time school comes back, you kind of rejuvenated your mindset so you can feel better in the next school year. Now, the last piece of rejuvenation is, I do notice a common theme of educators wanting to rejuvenate their space during the summer, because you do have some extra time where you can do that. You might want to take on some projects, get your closet organized and things like that. Now, it's important to not just dive in and just be, I'm going to organize my whole house. This is a mistake I find a lot of people make, is it's like, oh, I just, I have all this time, I'm going to start reorganizing my house. But if you don't do it really intentionally and literally ask yourself right now, where do you feel the most calm? Like, how does your space feel? And where is it you feel good? How can you cultivate more of that elsewhere in your house, right? Just kind of get an overall feel of what you need. But also, what would help you the most? If you could just pick one little thing. For me, a recent one I did is I organized the medicine cabinet above my sink in my bathroom and underneath. And it has stayed organized for so long. And it just took me like a few hours on one Saturday, and I've been able to keep it. And it is so nice. I just feel like every day now, because I need to get ready every day, right? And so it just feels so much better. So for you, what would be a little thing like that, where it's like, okay, this would take like one Saturday or one Thursday, I mean, it's summer, whenever, one afternoon for me to get this done. So pick little things, focus on the little wins rather than I'm going to organize my whole house. And you can make a plan to like do more of it if you want, of course, but just really try to think about it so you can make a more clear plan, which we're going to do on part 2 of this. But just try to just focus first, prioritize, like what is it that's going to help you feel rejuvenated in your life the most? Okay, and then the final question I have for you, and this is just an in general one, I just feel like summer is a really good time to focus on this, is how much time do you tend to, like, and during the school year, because then maybe like during the summer you can work on this so you can then bring it into next school year. So during last school year, how much time did you get in touch with what you were thinking and feeling? Like you realize what you're thinking instead of just going through the motions and being in it and not noticing what you're thinking and feeling, just being in it. Now, all of us spend some time in both. Most of us naturally spend more time just going with it and not even noticing necessarily what our current thoughts and feelings are. We're just in it, right? So what we want to work on, what really helps us to even become our own life coach, is to become that observer, to step out and look at what is it I'm thinking, what is it I'm feeling. So I want you to just think, how much time were you able to do that versus just being in it? And just kind of think about that. And then think about, what would you like to get to? What is a realistic way that you'd like to move that up? More time in than noticing what you're thinking and feeling. How much improvement would you like to see in that area? Okay, so to kind of recap that whole section of rejuvenation, we want to rejuvenate our mind, rejuvenate our body, and rejuvenate our space. And I just asked you a whole bunch of questions you can think of, which you can definitely refer back to in the show notes. And the last part is the educate portion. And educate also goes with learning, like getting your own education about how to better educate or how to do the things I mentioned. If you're like, well, I don't even know how to observe my mind and how I'm feeling, like you might need to do some learning about that, right? You might want to listen back onto a bunch of the past episodes on this podcast feed while you have more time during the summer, or while you're doing all your things, while you're doing your travels or whatever. Save some of the episodes here on the feed, on this podcast feed. There are so many that will help you do just that. You might want to take some time to learn stress or time management tools that will help you create good habits now during the summer that you can take with you into the next school year. And we'll talk about the how on that more on part 2. Today, I really just want you to think about, what is it that you need the most in that aspect? Do you need to understand like how your thoughts impact your life more? Do you feel like you get that, but you need to get more connected with processing your feelings and all of that? Just think about what it is that you need. And then another part we want to focus on, like I have touched on before, is to, what is it you want to do or learn to up-level your teaching next year? If there's one thing you could improve in your teaching next year, what would that be? Is there something that actually makes you eager and excited to learn, to get back to the classroom? Are you like, I would love to learn more about like STEM or STEAM activities I can incorporate into my classroom? Or I really want to learn some cool new ways to organize things, like the little hacks and tips and tricks. Or I want some new call and response or different things to improve classroom management. Or I want to learn how to do the science of reading. Or I want to find a new homeschool curriculum that's more fun. Like, whatever it is that could up-level your experience next school year, what is it you could do? Kind of that gift to your future self who's going back to teaching next year. And could you do to reignite that spark back, to make you excited to get back into the test lab of, oh yeah, I learned these things. Now I need to get back into where I'm teaching, where I can actually try out these things. Kind of takes you back into, again, like we mentioned, that youthful, that newer teacher energy, no matter how long we've been teaching, because we're still trying something new, because we aren't made to remain stagnant where we are. As teachers, we are lifelong learners. We always want to keep learning and growing and improving our skills as teachers, improving our skills in taking care of ourselves and understanding our mindset and our feelings. And we also want to follow our dreams. If there's any other spark in you, such as like a hobby or a desire for a side hustle or something you used to do that you haven't been making the time for anymore, that you've been like, any of those things is like, I want to do that someday. Consider this summer is now the time. The answer could be yes, or it could be no. You're the one who knows, not me. But just consider, is it the time to do whatever that little thing is that's been on your heart? And if so, could this summer be a good time to carve out some time for that dream you've been having, even just a little bit of time? And only you know the answer to that question. So the education section of this, again, we want to learn different ways to deal with our stress, to manage our time during the summer so we can take that with us into the school year. We also want to figure out different teaching strategies or things we want to learn to help us up level our teaching so we have something we're excited to try in the coming school year, and make time for whatever other personal passion we might have too. So recap of the whole thing. Basically, we want to find that balance of educating and rejuvenating. And for this one, for the summer, I actually reversed it. We did rejuvenation and then some education too. But again, we don't want to completely forget that education piece. And I talk a little bit more about why in part 2. So definitely make sure you check back here. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss part 2. But what we talked about today, we talked about rejuvenating yourself. And that's like your mind, your body, your emotions, rejuvenating your space, educating yourself on stress relief tools, time management, planning ahead for the next school year, up-leveling professionally, following your dreams, and really just seeking the answers to those questions for you and journaling on them. Really recommend journaling on them if you have it. And I would love to hear about your experience if you do. Like, please DM me on Educate and Rejuvenate on Instagram. Just last night, we were able to switch the name. So excited about that. In case you missed it, if for some reason this is your first episode, we just rebranded from Wife, Teacher, Mommy to Educate and Rejuvenate the podcast. So super excited about, well, not just the podcast, but the whole brand. Exciting stuff. Today we've gotten more clear on what you want this summer. Or maybe you're not quite yet. Maybe you're like, oh wait, my head is spinning from all those questions. That's why you've got at least a few days till the next one airs. And again, this is a podcast. You can take whatever time you need, even if both episodes are live. The show notes page is on the website, has all those questions listed if you want to refer back to them. Now, in the next part, we're going to talk about how will you not make sure to neglect any of these areas and make sure you get it all done. We're talking about all of that in part 2 of this series, dropping on Friday. So really today, like I mentioned in the first episode, once we rebranded just a few episodes ago, though, to Educate and Rejuvenate the podcast, I have my 3-step coaching framework, which is where we observe ourselves, then we choose our direction, and then we align ourselves with that direction. And so today we really focused a lot on observing yourself with those questions and choosing your direction, kind of what it is you want. And then next time we're going to talk about like, okay, let's align ourselves. Let's make sure we get to where we want to go. So I'm really excited for step 2. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. This week marks the start of my summer episodes, which for the 3rd year in a row, I'm doing 2 in a week now through my book release in August. Super excited to be here in your earbuds as your life coach twice a week, helping you have your best summer yet. So subscribe so you continue to get this content to keep you on the right track for where you want to be this summer. Now, if you enjoyed this episode or any episode of the podcast in general, I would love for you to email us a screenshot of your review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. I should mention to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. So I would love if you would go to Apple Podcasts and pull up Educate and Rejuvenate the podcast, leave a star rating, leave a review, and then right before you hit submit, take a screenshot because it takes a few days for the review to show up. Email the screenshot to my team at hello@educateandrejuvenate.com. Yes, we've got that changed too. And we will send you a $5 coupon that you can use on anything. And if you don't already have access to Educate and Rejuvenate, if you're not in the Educate and Rejuvenate Club or already reserved your ticket, I would recommend that you use that $5 coupon on grabbing a ticket to Educate and Rejuvenate, because if you liked what you heard on this podcast, if you're still listening, like, the goal of Educate and Rejuvenate is quite literally to help you educate and rejuvenate. The event was the first thing to have that name for 2 years before we even renamed the whole brand. So at the event, you're going to get everything you'd expect at like a professional development conference for teachers, with all the different sessions on topics like STEAM and reading and writing and math and science and all the things. But you're also going to get life coaching and yoga and a wild dance class and a curated course from me all about diving deeper into my 3-step framework, where you'll get to work with me, and live coaching, and so much. It's really professional development meets personal development. And we have a full teacher track. We have a full homeschool track too. So no matter whether you're a teacher or a homeschool parent, we've got stuff for you. I'm a former teacher, current homeschool mom, so I can really just relate and love both types of educators. And like I said, I'm here to help all educators, whether they teach in a traditional classroom, at their kitchen table, online, you name it, here to support you. We all have that same common goal of helping kids thrive and learn and grow. So I would love for you to use that $5 coupon you get for leaving a review on the podcast on your Educate and Rejuvenate ticket. If you already have a ticket or you're a member, you can apply that $5 coupon to your next renewal for the club, or use it in our shop, or for an upgrade, or to join the club if you'd like. We can even get you in the back door. It's closed right now, but if you leave a review and we give you the coupon and you want to join, we'll get you in. So coming to the event is really going to help you implement everything you've learned here. So would love to see you there. But until then, make sure you don't miss part 2 of this series, and we'll talk then. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you're hungry for more, be sure to check out the book that I wrote. It's called Educate and Rejuvenate, a 3-step guide to revitalize your teaching, renew your spirit, and reignite your passion for life. It is scheduled to be released in the summer of 2024. This book takes all the life coaching skills we talk about here on the podcast and puts them together in one easy to understand guide. Plus, when you pre-order, you'll receive a PDF workbook and additional resources to deepen your understanding and application of the concepts we've covered on the book and on this podcast. You won't find these resources anywhere else. Visit the link in the show notes to join the waitlist and be the first to know when the book becomes available for pre-order. Let's continue this journey of growth and rejuvenation together. Until next time.